Hey everyone, hopefully you had a great Labor Day weekend. This is, I think, our third meeting for the Latino/Hispanic anti-cohort, part of the anti-hate task force, right? And before we begin, I want to see if Berta, if you can go over just some of the things that you sent us via email, right, regarding some of the questions that we want to follow up on and some of the data that you were able to pull together. Hopefully everyone from the cohort had an opportunity to read over that information previously or prior to the meeting. But Berta, I don't know if you want to just once again highlight just where we left off last time, and then some of the data and statistics that came through that we collected before we begin our discussion for today.
Sure. So I had included a recap of our last meeting, highlighted points that the cohort discussed. And let me just pull up the email. Give me one moment. Okay, here I am. So you elected Danny Centeno as your co-chair. And Nora started, well, actually Vanessa Pinto started the discussion by voicing her interest in including youth voices as part of the cohort's work. So you had also talked about holding a youth outreach focus group. I did check with our council attorney, who said that yes, you could have the meeting, except it needed to be open to the public. We needed to, put out public notice. And I know that in your, from your last discussion, you also wanted to honor confidentiality and make sure that the youth were comfortable, sharing their honest experiences without having it being, open to the public. So I did include that in my email. If you do have, we cannot run into any Open Meetings Act violations, so it would need to be public. Another highlight was data that you all had requested, and I did send you a summary of the responses that I received back from the county executive. You will see, if you open the document that I attached, is that, well, number one, MCPS's data that they presented during our meeting, it is not by race and ethnicity. Race is one category. Nora, you had asked if they had it disaggregated, and I did check in, and unfortunately they did not, but they're working on that currently, and I included, the response in that on that document. As far as language access, you will see the different budget allocations within county government. So the Office of Community Partnerships, they oversee the county's language access program. And, there's different options that constituents have to have, translation interpretation services available to them. MC 311, you also requested to know the utilization of the Spanish Spanish language service, and you will see that it's gone up by 3%. So right now for FY23, 6.4 of the calls that come in through this system are in Spanish. And the last other question I actually just received this morning. I know that during our last meeting, you had talked about a concern, a perceived issue that, there's been incidents in that our Latino community have been on the receiving end of hate in public transportation. And what Ken Hartman shared with me is that they have, sorry, this literally came in just before our meeting. So let me just say, so they had not been aware of that issue. However, they work with, in collaboration and in coordination with Department of Transportation, also through always push out information to our community through the Spanish WhatsApp, which has over 1,800 contacts in that network. And this issue had not been raised through there. As far as public transportation harassment has not been something that they've been asked to address or has been reported again, but this goes to our conversation yesterday of the importance that our community also we need to provide education and outreach so that they know how to identify and how to report hate incidences, bias incidences as well. And let me see if I missed anything. I took out the data from Montgomery County Police Department report specific to our Latino community, which is something that, we've been discussing since our kickoff that Chief Jones attended. So you will see that as far as our Latino community, it's gone down. It's gone down, but then again, going back to our conversation from our last meeting, we also know that there's underreporting, right, for the various different reasons that were discussed by the cohort. And yeah, so I did highlight the different policy areas that you've already been discussing. So, one, Nora had mentioned it could be a recommendation, right, for the county to be charged with doing a needs assessment with youth. Of course, language access has been a big theme, better outreach, education, and awareness in Spanish, targeted campaigns around reporting incidents, better training for MCPS staff and teachers, and the need for more holistic supports for our community to thrive, and importance of inclusive community engagement. So those are just highlights. I think it's good, Alex, that you now start focusing on the actual policy recommendations, right? And start deciding on what those are going to be. And of course, if you are going to have a listening session, whether it's virtual or in person, if it's in person, we will need at least, a little more than 2 weeks, because that takes a lot more coordination. If you decide to do a virtual listening session, then you should probably start looking at the calendar for the next 2 to 3 weeks. Your presentation, it's October 10th. I'm sorry, don't quote me on that yet. Let me
October 10th.
October 10th. So even, the week, if you do a virtual community listening session the week of the 25th, then you still have, an entire week to then incorporate that feedback into your presentation. So you're in good track for sure. You've been doing a lot of work already. So
yeah, thank you, Bertha, for reading those statistics and all the information that we had requested. I think that it speaks to the conversation that we had prior and that we've been having, which is we don't believe that we have all the information yet available to us, or the information that is being presented is not complete. Again, one of the challenges of working in the Latino/Hispanic community for many reasons is really getting people to not only speak out against hate bias and hate crimes, right, but also the challenges that we face when it comes to language access, right, when it comes to people even knowing what an anti-biased hate incident is, right? And so I think that the statistics and the data is not surprising. A lot of us do a lot of work in the community. We always know that that's one of the challenges. And I think that I look forward to moving forward some potential policy recommendations, and then ironing out also some outreach, an outreach plan between now and then, right? And so I'm not, that's just like my personal reflections. I'll let other members of the cohort speak on that. The only thing I do want to say is, I know that one of the big pieces that we identified was that the youth voice was missing in this space, right? And knowing that we can't hold a group in closed doors, I just also want other cohort members to kind of start thinking of how we can authentically involve the youth voice, right, without compromising their confidentiality, right, and without with ensuring that what we're getting, the responses that we're getting, is from an authentic place. So at this point, I just want to open it up to Nora, Ruben, Danielle, if you guys have any reflections based on the information that Bertha has, and then also keeping in mind how we want to proceed with involving the youth.
Okay, so first of all, I don't think there's enough time to do the youth listening session. I think that should become a recommendation of what of the data that is missing. I also have been thinking since the presentation of the Jewish cohort about the challenge that the Latino cohort will face, and let me explain what I mean. So we all know that there is explicit and implicit bias, right? We're all clear on that, right? So explicit bias is like the hate crimes that the Jewish community in our county is currently experiencing. They can quote statistics on how incidents have gone up by 300%. They can show pictures of actual things that have been defaced. So that's explicit, right? I think that in terms of Latinos and the immigrant community in Montgomery County, our challenge is that we don't have a lot of data because, and a hypothesis of mine, you know, a wondering of mine is that maybe hate crimes, explicit hate crimes against Latinos go underreported. So, so maybe one of the recommendations needs to be taking a look at data collection and how we collect that information, and doing like a campaign to let people know how to report hate crimes against Latinos. That's one thing. The second thing I was thinking is that we need to expand our definition. I think when we present, right? I think we need to expand the definition of what hate is, to go beyond explicit racism and talk about implicit bias and racism and structural racism. Because, for instance, and let me explain the context of how I feel this way. One is, we know that in terms of outcomes, Latinos in the county, as is all over the country, they earn less per dollar than whites and other racial groups, right? So they are not paid at the same rates for the same job as other races. We know that with the educational outcomes in MCPS, we know that Latinos are the lowest performing racial group in the county. We also know that Latinos have some of the highest health risk factors in the county, right? So highest rates of high blood pressure, diabetes, asthma, and all of these conditions are tied to a structural issue with poverty, right? Because people are poor, they have fewer access to good health, to good education, and also to good food and honest pay. Okay, so so when we're talking about the Latino experience in Montgomery County, we cannot be focused on explicit hatred. During the Trump years, however, if we were to have taken the data available to us during the Trump years, where there was a head of state calling Latinos all kinds of things, I'm sure we have statistics about how that then got translated into hate crimes for Latinos. I think there's an argument to be made that with the upcoming presidential election and with the dialogue that will be happening, or not dialogue, that's a wish, but with the vitriol that will be spewed by Republican candidates, and specifically Trump, that kind of hatred against non-whites will come out once again, and then Latinos will become another target as they were before. I think that argument can be made. So I think that one thing we have to be a little bit cautious of, and I think it would serve us well, is to have it. So if we're creating a PowerPoint like the Jewish cohort did, that we have the definition, the legal definition of hate crime, and then also the more globally accepted definition of implicit hate, and talk about explicit and implicit hate, and how, you know, Latinos are every day experiencing implicit hate. And then we bring in access to language access. And then we bring in, you know, other data points that Bertha was so kind to dig up for us. Because otherwise, it's not apples and apples that we're comparing. Does that make sense? What are your thoughts? What are your reflections?
So I think that Nora, if I could go, Nora, you are like completely right. I think that we have to establish like a difference between hate and bias. It's like what you call, you know, it's like implicit versus explicit. And I think that in the Hispanic and Latino community, the problem is like, it's always bias. It's always like implicit, unless, you know, something happened that escalate, like what we see, for instance, in like the article that about like our cohort was like on Tiempo Latino, I think that it was about like the hate crime that happens in that happened in Annapolis, that three Hispanics that were like killed. And I think that it shows that, you know, things basically, they keep bias in a low level, but that's the first step, you know, for something to escalate. So we need, or in the work that we need to do is like, we need to focus more on like the bias and like the implicit than the explicit one, because there are not so many cases, and it's like, we cannot base our data on those like the hate crimes, because there's not so much data there.
I
Then
will
with
say, Ruben, just for 1 second, I just want to make sure that like, if I were like thinking about a PowerPoint, one thing I might do when we talk about the definitions is also have the Anti-Defamation League's pyramid of hate. So there's an actual illustration, and it talks about the different levels of hate, and like the implicit hate is like, it's at a higher level than you would think, because the next step is violence. So I think that, Ruben, just to add to that, I'm sorry for interrupting you.
No, this is great. Thank you so much for chiming in, like Nora. I think that's great. I think that we should show that, and we should show where the Hispanic and Latino community are. Also, regarding to the youth, that basically we are looking for, you know, like some of the data, right? And I'm part of the PTA of like school that is like 80% Hispanic and Latino. I've been talking, and I know a lot of like my friends that are like NCPS teachers, So I've been interacting with them, asking them, it's like, hey, what is your opinion on, how your kids they report these hate crimes or bias, it's like how, and where I hear, even when NCPS put in place this like kind of like plan, and one of the basically major points is like restoration, right? They take like the justice they need to be restored for all these victims. What I hear from most of like these kids is like that they feel that it's not worth to actually report these cases, because again, they are like low level, they don't know exactly to what where to complain. That's one thing that I think that we need to work, like really provide like those ways so people could see what is the way to complain, make them easy to complain. And then another thing is like that these kids, their experience is like the ones that they report some of these cases, they are being somehow, I'm not gonna say punished, but they are gonna be, it's like some of like this kind of process, it puts them in a conversation with the aggressor or a conversation with like the community, and some of they don't feel like they want to be put in that position. So I think that we should work with NCPS on issues like this, it's like the offenders. Also, I think that we need to address the offenders, understand why they did what they did, and also with like the families and the parents. I think that it's essential. It's like when you have bias or implicit crimes, or even explicit crimes at elementary school, that tell us that basically that comes from the families. That doesn't come like from like the first grade kids, So I think that that's another important thing that we need to work. And I completely agree with you, Nora. There are like so many like layers that we need to keep adding, right? So I think that it's like lack of education, poverty, how to build community. It's all of these. They are gonna play like a really, really important role. And we need to consider that, and we need to consider recommendations on how we are going to address that on our recommendations. And then I'm going to move I'm going to do like a completely radical move. And most of these like measures, I feel that they are going to be more like on the preventative care, or then on the preventative side, right? But I think that we need to also make some recommendations on terms of like actions that they need to be taken when really, really bad, or or when some of these like incidents happen. So for instance, not only facilitate the way that these people complain, but also train police officers how to deal, with bias. With this, the difference between bias and a hate crime, and this low level implicit hate could not happen, and it could not be tolerated. So I think that we need to work on legislation for actually, addressing how we can address that. And that's like my 2 cents, on that part. I don't know what.
I don't know, Danielle, I don't know if you wanna speak or have any thoughts. Just want to give you some space.
In my case, I'm on the same boat of like we definitely need that.
I'm not sure if it's my connection, but I'm having problems hearing Alex.
We hear you, Ruben. Go ahead, Daniel.
Give me 1 second. I'm literally finishing up a form. I apologize to everyone. One of my students and slash godsons got his finger stuck in a wood machine, and we're at Holy Cross trying to get him situated. So he's out. He didn't lose the finger, but I'm filling out the form, so I apologize. I'll get back to you in maybe 2 or 3 minutes.
No worries. Thank you. Thank you. No, I just want to say I second everything that Nora has said, right? And also it seems like we have policy recommendations that she has put forth as well, right? Holding that listening session. We're in a bit of a time crunch, right? But holding a meaningful listening session. Obviously, the data collection is a huge one, right? Expanding the definition. Expanding the definition, right, of what is a hate bias instead of what is a hate crime, right, to include not only implicit but explicit. And I think, building off of that, right, I also have some potential recommendations that I'd like to put forth, right? I think language access is a big one, right? That's always going to be something that we're always going to be striving to better. Just with my personal experience with 311 and just, I know the county does a great job at really trying to ensure that language access is a top priority, but also looking at the numbers that Bertha shared with us, right? It's still really low. So we still have a lot of work to do. And one of the things that I saw in another anti-task force, right, is how do we utilize community grants to better our outreach to the comunidad. And I'll give you guys an example, right? CASA's heavily involved, and I'm sure all of us in the space, but CASA's really heavily involved when it comes to housing, right? And we're able to do that authentic work because of a community grant. These things take time. It takes time to identify the community. It takes time to have that authentic cara a cara, right? Those individual conversations. But not only that, it takes time to build upon education and to build upon trust, right? And so just like any other major topic that we discuss when it comes to employment, education, and health, these things take time, right? And unfortunately, that's something that I would like to see perhaps as a recommendation. How do we utilize community grants and include organizations, right? So that they're able to educate not only the public, right, in terms of, do you know what an anti-bias incident is? Do you know what happens? Do you know that it's happening to you, right? Do you know how to report it? All that stuff, right? I think I would like to see as a recommendation in terms of how can we utilize already like the wonderful organizations that do the great work, right? And do that community outreach. I know in Los Angeles, they had a anti-hate campaign where several organizations came together and sort of like what Nora and Ruben were talking about, right? And really not only condemn, but essentially launch a campaign within the Latino and Hispanic community to really go above and beyond to do authentic outreach, but also have a whole campaign based on education, right? What does this mean? What are the definitions? What do you do when this happens to you? And again, I think that we have the infrastructure in Montgomery County to be able to do something like that. And also partner with public and elected officials, right? As I said earlier in the previous call, we have 2 Latino council members who we can really utilize who represent majority districts of Latino and Hispanic community members. And so how do we partner them into this as well? And so those are just like my thoughts, right? In regards to that. And the last thing I will say is I know that we're probably not going to get to a roundtable. We have done many community forums on different topics, right? I think that they are valuable, but I also think that we already know the answers to the majority of these questions, right? Just based on our experience, our lived experience, our learned experience, right? And so we had talked about potentially doing a survey that we can share within our networks, right? And I think that survey could potentially look something along the lines of asking questions, do you know what an anti-hate bias incident is? Do you know how to report it, right? X, Y, and Z. But the last thing I do want to say is maybe I would perhaps hopefully like to squeeze in maybe a roundtable discussion with organizations and prominent leaders and activists that probably do this work in the community, right? Just to ensure that we're hearing from them, right? And we're not leaving out any unturned leaves, right? And have that discussion in terms of, hey, what are you guys seeing on the ground? What is something that you think we're missing when it comes to these recommendations, right? And then go from there. So that's just like my 2 cents, and I'll go ahead and pass it to Nora, who has her.
Two things. One, I love the additions, Alex. I agree with them. I think it's important to note them for our recommendations. I think the idea of having the community grants have a specific focus on just across the board on how to reduce racial tension in the county would be good. I like that be one of the priority funding areas would be a great idea. I wanted to just bring up one other thing that I was thinking about, which is in terms of hate, we don't usually characterize Latino on Latino violence as hate crimes, but the gang issue is very much a violent issue. And it does involve our community. I don't know the ethics around that. I'm not sure about, I'm not steeped in that conversation, but I would say that we should think about that. We should think about, at least have a discussion of whether it would be an appropriate thing, and maybe the way to tackle it in a policy recommendation is that there would be more positive youth development programming to keep youth away from violence, right? Because every time I look at the MoCo show, it seems like every weekend there's been a shooting in Germantown or Gaithersburg throughout the summer involving Latino youth. So that's also heavily on my mind. And the other thing I was going to say is that I think it would be it might be helpful to suggest, since we can't pull together a community listening session, but to suggest that a needs assessment be done, but also to tap into existing community gatherings. For instance, the newcomer youth are going to have a youth summit this in October or November. And that would be a keen opportunity where 100, 200 newcomer kids are coming together, and to ask them, what has your experience been in feeling welcomed in the county? What are the biggest challenges that you're facing to integrating into your new community? Those type of questions that would get us some real data from kids who are recent arrivals, because the newcomer definition, I think, is less than 1 year in the county. So I just make that suggestion as well.
Thank you. And then I think, Valeria, if I can include you in this for a second, right? I think that you probably know best, but I think that there's a lot of opportunities for members of the cohort to attend, right? Events like youth events, as Nora pointed out, but also other events with different community partners, right? Especially in the Latino/Hispanic community. Unfortunately, I could not attend due to an emergency, the conversation that they had last night. But I think that if we can identify some of those upcoming events where we can start having those conversations, right, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. The other piece of that is, while the Latino cohort is presenting, at the beginning of October, we're having a council presentation in December, right? And so the initial presentation on behalf of the cohort is in October, but then you could attend the youth summit that Nora referenced and do a listening session there, right? I don't know who the organizer is, but I'm sure we can ask for that to be a part of it. Oh, great. So we know someone, right, Nora? So Nora can hook us up there. And so, we can certainly be part of that conversation and then include the results in the council summary in December, right? Because you'll have more information then. So I wouldn't see October as that's the end of this and we can't include new information. The other piece you mentioned doing a potential survey. And so I think that's Vanessa using my link. So it says Valeria's logging on. The other piece of this is you mentioned a survey. And so, keep in mind that the council has something called the Office of Legislative Oversight. And so you can include that as a recommendation that the council use the Office of Legislative Oversight to conduct additional survey and get this data on behalf of the community. And the last piece, see, you handed me the microphone. Alex, you mentioned Los Angeles and doing the outreach there. Seattle also has a partnership between police and the businesses in which participating businesses, which I was just there a few weeks ago, and it was nearly every business had a sticker on their window saying report hate crimes and what's defined as a hate crime and how to do that. And so, speaking of outreach, right, being able to do these stickers in multiple languages, having a partnership with businesses and starting some of that outreach that people, it's essentially a know your rights, right? So people know this is a hate crime and this is how you can report it.
Thank you, Valeria. Thank you for all of that. And then I think, I don't know, Daniel, if you want to get a word in.
Yep, I'm back.
Okay.
Yeah, I was agreeing with Nora, and as well as I had a chance to do a small survey for 100 people. This past August 29th, there was a fair at Glenmont Shopping Center for high schoolers and back to school stuff. So I was able to gather some information. I'll send it to all you guys by email or what I got about, hate crimes going through schools. And it was just 2 questions like, have you been a witness of a hate crime? And do you know what a hate crime is? And most of the kids' answers were very similar. They're like, we don't talk about that in school. We don't have any trainings on that. Teachers just share what a vague idea of a hate crime is or segregation. And also, as Nora mentioned, there's a whole wave of newcomers into the school system. They are being segregated by their own community. So like Latinos segregating Latinos from their groups is one of the things that I've seen as the back to school session started. So maybe information we can share as well and do a recommendation on that, on how to, like Nora mentioned, create programming that helps bridge the gap between newcomers and old school, kids that already been on the system for a minute. So.
Thank you. And I see Vanessa just joined us. Welcome, Vanessa.
Yes, thank you. Yes, sorry, I was in another meeting, but I didn't want to interrupt. I was hearing what you were sharing. Thank you. Thank you, Alex.
Yeah, and so Vanessa, I think just to kind of recap, right, to catch you up to speed, right, we have moved forward with some potential, or if not, some recommendations, right? Some of the recommendations that have been discussed, right, is including listening sessions, because it doesn't seem like we're going to have enough time to host one, right? Improving and strengthening data collection, expanding the definition to include implicit and explicit when it comes to hate bias and hate crimes, right? Community grants, expanding that, right? And how do we include community grants to do authentic outreach with partners and organizations in the community. There were some examples in LA and then also in Seattle, correct me if I'm wrong, in regards to how organizations and different government agencies came together to specifically start an anti-hate campaign targeting at Latinos and Hispanic community members, language access, and I think there's some more, but I don't know if you want to use this opportunity to reflect on some of the data that Bertha sent over email, or if you have any recommendations, ideas in regards to our cohort.
Of course, since I'm very I'm very enthusiastic about having any opportunity to talk to community, not having enough time to listening session is really something that I regret. Like, is this already a decision? Like, we won't have any the listening session or any listening session.
Yeah, no, I mean, nothing has been finalized or concrete. I think that given the time period that we have between now and our presentation, right? I think that one of the things, the recommendations is a listening session, but we haven't made that a concrete decision, right? I think that if other members feel that they want to really get down a listening session before or even after our presentation, we're still open to that. One of the things that I recommended was that last time we had talked about a survey, right? And so how do we utilize that survey in our own, circles or spaces that we're part of? And then one of the things that we also talked about was trying to do a youth town hall, but have it closed for confidentiality purposes. And unfortunately, we have been advised that that needs to be something that is public in terms. So all that being said, right, it is still definitely an option on the table. And so I don't know what your thoughts are, Vanessa, or other members of the cohort, right, in terms of putting down some sort of listening town hall, listening session, or creating an outreach plan between now and our presentation, and then obviously post-presentation.
I'm thinking if we have before, can make a big difference on what kind of presentation we will have, don't you think? Because I'm pretty sure that the listening session will give us maybe more knowledge about what's really going on. What else is like something that we didn't saw about it? I'm just thinking maybe can change a lot of the presentation that we may have.
Vanessa, I think it would be important for Bertha to reiterate the challenge of holding a listening session, which is why we made a decision not to move forward. Bertha, can you share with Vanessa?
Sure. So I said at the very beginning that if you were considering doing an in-person listening session, it's challenging for us and we would need more than 2 weeks notice because, there's a lot that needs to be planned on the back end for council staff. Now, for a virtual community listening session, that's still an option. And technically you could have one the last week of September, which would still give us time. I think one thing to keep in mind is that, there's 5 other cohorts that are still meeting weekly. Some of them are also planning their own activities. None of them have anything that's in person because of the challenges of coordinating that and because of the tight deadlines that we are following with the timeline. But it's definitely up to you. But also, I had this conversation yesterday with Valeria, right? You all bring a wealth of experiences. I mean, as members of the Latino Hispanic community, doing the work that you do within your organizations, you're pretty much are experts for what our community's needs and priorities. If instead you want to do different outreach activities like a survey, or thank you, Danny, for taking the initiative to do that survey with the youth that you met last week, and also Ruben at your school with the parents that you work with. I think that's still informing a lot of the policy recommendations that you're developing, and there's so much value, and you're certainly including our community because you are and you know our community, right? Again, if it's something that you want to tackle, like I said to you, the last week of September would be a good time to having it in a week before your meeting. Certainly we can do that. If it's virtual, it's definitely more doable for us than if it's in person. But yeah, it's something that you can decide for sure.
Thank you. I'm already, so I'm thinking feeding two birds with one hand, because we don't kill birds at cheer. So that's why I'm saying feeding them. Anyway, we are planning the last week of September. We've been talking about, we meaning community, I want to think that I'm included with the community, with this community. And we've been planning a community forum with the topic is pedestrian safety. Yes, but also we've been working on other community issues. One of them, of course, since these are most of them, what they have in common is a kid at the school, because this is in the New Hampshire State's area, the school, elementary school. So this is something that I can maybe see how we can do it there. Because one thing that it's gonna be kind of a celebration, because yes, and I think it's public that the Office of Council Evan Glass has been helping us advancing this issue of pedestrian safety. It was like a really something to celebrate. The community has been involved in this, and so it's not gonna be how can I say? It's not gonna be a full agenda that we're gonna talk about it. There are some other issues that we have to work on, but maybe there can be an opportunity to also listen in what the Spaniards may say.
Yeah, Vanessa, and I think that prior to you hopping on, we had discussed that since we're not doing a listening session, there's plenty of opportunities in different events. I know Nora had mentioned a youth summit. Is it a summit, Nora, or youth summit, right, where we can discuss this? Bertha, I do have a question. These conversations in these different spaces are okay to have, right? If it's 3 members, that then this becomes essentially like an official public event that has to be live streamed, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's what takes that's what takes a lot of the planning. Not necessarily the live stream though, but actually we have to record it, because then it needs to get posted the following day.
Anyway, going back to my idea, if let's say for different reasons we think, okay, no, that's too much, it's too much, so a survey. And if you remember something that I offered, let's say, is that since we run the food distribution, around 300 families coming every twice a month. So that maybe can be doable. We can do it. I have volunteers, teenagers that are volunteers. Maybe we can have some guidance on, because this is not the, so we've been doing this. It's not the first time that we're gonna be doing a survey during the food distribution, because good thing that everybody is coming on foot. So there's no the distribution by cars. No, it's all by food. So we've been having the opportunity to talk to people while people are waiting in line. So yeah, we've been doing for different purposes. So is that something that we can do? I would say the next food distribution will be, well, actually it's today because we had to cancel the Tuesday because normally it's the first and the third Tuesday of the month. We had to cancel this past fifth because of the holiday. Was some issues with delivery, so it's going to be today, and the next one will be the 19th, Tuesday, September 19th. So maybe I'm thinking, can we do it on the 19th?
I'm sorry, but I cannot attend a community event on the 19th. I run parent sessions in the evening on every Tuesday. My September is pretty full already with previous engagements. So I would not be able to participate in a community event at this short notice.
Can I throw it out there just to try to help us along? Is there an appetite to do a listening session if we were to remove this deadline, right? This impeding deadline? Is there an appetite, or is that something that the group prefers be left as a policy recommendation?
I vote for policy recommendation.
I vote the same as Nora.
All
And
the
I
same
would-
as Nora too, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I think eventually down the line, we want to have one, but I think we'll be more effective in these like smaller events, right? And having those conversations. So I'm also with Nora as well.
So I'm a little confused. So are you saying that you would prefer those in a very small capacity, like small group of people, or you want to have it? Am I understanding well? Alex, can you please help?
Nora, I don't think you had joined when, so Daniel actually also hosted or was part of an event last week with youth in Glenmont, and he shared that he did his own, he conducted a survey with about 100 youth who attended, and the two questions were, do you know what a hate crime, hate incident, bias incidents is, and do you know how to report it? So he's going to send us what he gathered from that group gathering from that event. I think if you're having, something scheduled that you're going to have members of our community, it wouldn't, I think it'll be beneficial if you did the same as Daniel did, right? Ask these questions of our community and have that feedback reported back to the cohort so it could be incorporated into your presentation. It's just that if you're planning to host an event, whether it's small or big, whatever the size of our community who attends, we need to bring our crew, for lack of a better word, from the council, because it needs to be, well, if you have majority of the cohorts attending too, that'll make it an official cohort gathering. So we would need to record it and have it available on our website the following day. Now, if there's no quorum and you do what Daniel did, right? Or if only two of you attend this event, that's certainly something that you could do, and you could get the important feedback from our community as well.
Okay, yeah. So by the way, this is Vanessa. Because you said Nora. So okay, so
I'm so sorry.
It's fine. It's fine. So of course, like in order to have to compare apples and apples, I should do the same questions. I don't remember if we decided on what kind of questions, but if those are two questions that make sense, but I would like to clarify. I think he asked if you knew about a hate crime, and the other one is what is your understanding of hate crime, right? Let's say, yes, agree on those two questions. I can have the same questions, and on the 19, I'm imagining having the survey, asking these questions to the people that are coming to the footage session. That is one thing. And I think maybe we all agree that the more we know about what people are understanding about the concept, what they're seeing out there, the better, right? We have more, we're more informed about what is going on with the community. About I know how difficult, how much it would take, like, to organize I'm not gonna be very ambitious, but let's say a small listening session. So do you think, or maybe you already said that it's too short notice if we are thinking maybe the last week of September?
Another thing that was mentioned, I'm sorry, Vanessa, for not, mistaking your name. So another thing that Valeria mentioned is that, yes, you do have your community presentation on October 10th, but also the very final report that includes everyone's recommendations is at the end of November. So after you do your presentation, yes, we have, more time to then work with you and plan a a smaller focus group if you want to take on that that outreach. Certainly we can do it, and then it will make it into the final report, which is going to be presented at the end of November. So I think right now the focus, though, and the reason why the cohort decided to make it a policy recommendation is because of the October 10th deadline, which is basically, if you don't count this week, it's like 3 weeks from today.
Right. Yes, thank you for the explanation. Now, I'm sorry to all of you if I'm kind of lost in some of the details. It has been a very, very busy time for me lately. Yes, but thank you for the explanation. Now I have a better idea. And well, so in that sense, does it make sense for me to do the two questions that they already are being done, so I can do those two questions, the 19, in a survey?
Yeah, I think that's fine if you want to copy what Ruben did. But I think that we're open to making it your own, right? So or not Ruben, Daniel. But Vanessa, I think that that's something that that we can discuss, right? Like if you have better questions, I think go for it. And if you want to share the questions with the group, right, via email, that's fine. I know Valeria also talked about including the Office of Legislative and Oversight, right, in terms of, the county already does a lot of surveys, right, and so having a conversation with them. Valeria, I don't think that we could, how fast do you think that, well, that's painstaking work, right? It'll take them a while, but
Yeah,
in terms of putting together like a quick survey, right, that they probably wouldn't be able to do it within.
Yeah, so the Office of Legislative Oversight is essentially the research arm of the county council, and so it would have to be in there as a recommendation, and then a council member needs to request that report, make it one of their requests for the year, and then the whole body approves the requests that come through. So it wouldn't be done until the following year minimum. So it'd be a long ways away.
Thank you. Nora?
I'm sorry, the chat is disabled, so I was not able to just let you guys know that I have to leave. I have to go meet with the school. I will touch base with Berta, Alex, and Daniel for next steps, and I appreciate everybody's time. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Nora.
Nora.
Okay, so I think I just want to move us on to our final part of the agenda, which is next steps and putting some dates on the calendar, if that's fine with everyone. Okay,
Sure.
so the big ticket items, obviously, we're working towards the presentation on October 10th, right? I think that I want us to establish when we're going to meet as a cohort in between now and then, right? How often do you guys think we need to meet? Do we need to meet 2 more times before the presentation? Berta, for the presentation, putting it together, is that, I'm assuming that we're going to be working with your office to put that presentation together. Are we in charge of, can we put together the slides and then, or are we working together with you, or you guys put together the slides and we give you the information?
So right now the cohorts are in charge of putting together the slides, but if there's anything else that I can do to support, facilitate, provide more information on, I'll work with you on that.
Got it. Okay, so I think that what I want to do is I want to put a meeting on the calendar, and the next meeting will essentially kind of start wrapping up maybe some additional policy recommendations that we would like to put forth, right? I think that hopefully by then, it seems like we may have an event or two that some of the cohort members will attend, and we'll have more data and information collected to help us make any additional policy recommendations. So I'm looking at the calendar right now, it's September 7th. I think, what do folks think of doing perhaps another meeting the week of the 17th? So we're talking about 17th, 18th, 19th, 20th, right? Is that too soon? Or we could also kick it off to the final week of September, give people a little bit more cushion time. So if we do it in the final week of September, right, we'll have approximately about a week and a half between that meeting and our presentation. And do we believe that that's enough time to have additional discussions in regards to policy recommendations that may come forth, and also putting together our presentation, what that looks like?
Alex, I would just add that the full task force is meeting the week of the 17th. So the 19th is when the Muslim cohort will be presenting. So I don't know if you also want to give yourself, the opportunity to hear them out too, and see how they're organizing their own presentation. Of course, we know that everyone's is going to be different, right?
Yeah.
But if you're considering the week of the 24th, there's a lot more flexibility also on our end. Just because of, lots of work that's happening with other cohorts too.
Got it. Okay. So given that information, can we shoot for the week of the 24th, guys? And if we can, what day works best for people? Does Thursday, the 28th, around this time work for people?
Thursday works for me, Alex. That's my morning off, / afternoon off. So yeah.
So we could say like Thursday at 11 a.m. Does that work for you, Ruben and Vanessa?
Yeah,
Yes.
for me it works. Yeah, I could make it work.
Okay, awesome. So, okay, so we have that on the books. So our next cohort meeting will be Thursday, September the 28th at 11 a.m. And then it looks like September 19th, not only are we meeting with the full task force, right? But it also seems like, Vanessa, that's the day of your event as well, correct?
Yes, that would be the food distribution from normally from 4 to 5:30.
Okay, got it. So I think if we can also just put that on people's calendars, right? I don't think we're competing against the task force. So Vanessa, I think that's something that you may go to solo unless another member of the task force wants to join, but obviously note that we can't meet quorum because we have a competing meeting as well.
Yeah, of course, anyone is invited in New Hampshire State Elementary from 4 to 5:30. Just I would like to know exactly what the questions will be, because I don't want to do like different from what it's already done in order to analyze. So that's the next thing. That's my next question. So can I imagine that the 28 that we're gonna meet, is there any process how we're gonna analyze the surveys, who's gonna do it, what kind of, how we're gonna present those results? It's already decided. Are we gonna talk about it? It's
Yeah.
If you and Daniel send me your survey feedback by COB Monday the 25th of September, I'm happy, or before, I'm happy to have it all, organized in a document to have it ready for the 28th.
sure, yes, no, the next day. The next day I'm thinking the 20th. Obviously I'll have the results and I can share immediately, because I know it takes time, it's work. So yeah, okay. I just would like to agree on if the two questions that Daniel did are gonna be the only ones that I need to ask. Yes, it's good not to have too much, because it's better have the quality time with people instead of having a bunch of questions that people don't even want to respond. The only one that I would add to the two questions I think are really nice. The only one that I would add would be maybe if whenever you know about some hate crime, do you know who to go or to whom to report? I will let you know if they know where to go or to whom to talk. I don't know if you think it's good. If not, just leave it the two questions.
Yeah, I think it's great, Vanessa. I think that's great. And then again, I'd say don't feel obligated to be married to those questions, right? Like that's something that Danielle put together, right? I think they're two great questions, right? But if you want to add more, right, or if you say, hey, I also thought of another question, so I'm going to have 4 questions. Yeah, please feel free to email the cohort. But I think we didn't come up with like a concrete set of survey questions. I think we're kind of leaving that open, but I think the 2 questions plus the one that you've added are great.
Sure. Okay. So this is what I'm gonna do. Maybe the action item here. I'm gonna talk to people that have been also doing this in order to have some insight, like some feedback from those who think, oh, but this also can be asked. This is a good opportunity to know this. So I'll create a draft, but I will share the draft with you all first in order to go out and do the survey, because I would like for all of you to agree on. Yeah, those seem to be, I'm thinking just the 4 maximum 4 questions. If not, we don't have too much time for people to respond. So, but I will share with you, yeah, during the beginning of the next week, And if you all think it's okay, yeah, we all think it's good. So I'll go, go ahead and I'll do the survey.
Awesome, thank you. So I think that concludes just the dates that we have, right? The last thing I do want to propose, right, is I had discussed about potentially doing a roundtable discussion with the 2 Latino council members and perhaps leaders of the different organizations that do outreach in in the community, right? And so I think that that's something that I want to perhaps potentially put together, right? Berta and Valeria, maybe perhaps towards the end of September, right? Giving my close connection with these council members, but also knowing a lot of prominent leaders that do a lot of great work, right? Having that discussion. And so ideally, I think that that's something that I want to do without reaching quorum, right? But I know that anytime electeds get involved, right? And I know also some of my other cohort partners may want to be there as well, right? And so I just want to get people's thoughts in regards to that potential idea of doing like this roundtable discussion with the two Latino council members, council member Natalie Fanny Gonzalez, council member Albornoz. You know, I'm not against having other council members, but again, for reasons of them being the two Latino council members, and then, you know, out doing some outreach to some community partners and having that discussions in regards to A, what are you guys seeing on the ground? B, you know, given the list of our potential policy recommendations, is there anything that you think is missing, right? And C, again, I think that a lot of us already do a lot of great work in the community. As Berta mentioned, like we're kind of like experts with our learned experience, right? And so having that fruitful discussion with them, I don't know what people's thoughts are, right? In regards to potentially setting something up. If we're not reaching quorum, right, that's something that I believe that we can easily, I guess, checking the council member schedules, right, easily get in within the next 2 to 3 weeks. But if our cohort members do want to be present, right, and we do reach quorum, then I think that's something that we need to really plan with Bertha to ensure that we're given enough time for her to do the agenda and to also put that public notice out there. Any thoughts or concerns about that?
So I'm pretty sure that it's gonna be on the note in our notes. So, but can you repeat, when are you planning this?
Ideally, it would be in the next 2 to 3 weeks. So obviously not this week. I think the sweet spot is probably the last week, given the fact that you know, we have a lot of the cohorts have their different meetings. I think it all just comes down to whether we reach quorum or not, right? And so if we do reach quorum and all our members of the cohort want to be there, then we want to ensure that we give enough time for Bertha and the team to pull that together. But if we don't reach quorum, right, and it's just a simple roundtable discussion that we can have, hopefully in the council building, then I think that we, you know, we can have it within the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Thank you.
I think also, Alex, this is something that, of course, we'll need to involve the council member schedulers, because I don't have access to that. I don't know their availability, but I think it's still a bit challenging to plan it for the last week of September. If maybe you might consider the first week of October before your presentation, I think that gives us a little more time to also check, you know, with their individual offices. And then, of course, you wouldn't be able to have the 3 members because of quorum, just because then it'll need to be, you know, like the conversation we had earlier, it needs to be recorded and made public the following day. So we just want to make sure that we're properly publicly putting out notices if you do have a majority of you attending. And I think the other thing to consider is who else do you want to bring on, right? I mean, of course, Council President Glass has been spearheading this work, but then, you know, if you're considering having other council members, we also need to think of quorum within the council too, and the council members who attend. So I think it'll be great if you do want to go ahead to maybe push it another week, just so that, you know, we can certainly check in with individual offices.
Yeah, I mean, the simplest way to do this would be, Alex, if it were you and one other member of this cohort, right? That way it's not a quorum. And then just keep it to the 2 council members. and reach out directly to their schedulers and see, you know, what their availability is in the next 2 to 3 weeks. You know, council gets back into session on Monday. And so I definitely recommend, if you're planning to do that, get the request in like now, right? We're scheduling Evan through December already. So definitely get that request in ASAP.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I'm open to pushing this the first week of October. I think the two obvious council members that we want there are the two Latino council members, right? I'm throwing this back to the members of the cohort, right? Are we okay with inviting the two? Are there any other council members, right, that you believe must be there outside of those two? And then the biggest question is, you know, do members, are they okay with only myself and another potential cohort member to be there? Or do you guys all want to be part of this process, right? And do you want to actually put this officially on the books and reach quorum and have this video?
Can you remember, sorry, can you remind me what's the main objective that you have for this conversation?
Yeah, so I mean, you know, the two council members, right? We have two Latino council members, right? One who represents a heavily district Latino / Hispanic district, right? And they're just as deeply engaged in our community. And so we want to have conversations with them in terms of their thoughts of what they're hearing, what they're seeing, right? Their experience as well, right? But also, you know, them looking at some of the potential policy recommendations that we already have, and then them perhaps maybe identifying some areas that we may be missing. But with that, also bringing other organizations or prominent leaders within our community that do the groundwork, right? That spend a lot of time in our community, getting input from them, right? What are they seeing? What are they hearing? And then identifying perhaps some other areas that we may be missing as well.
Well, yes, thank you. Thank you for that. Yes, I would like to participate. I would like to hear from the others.
Ruben, I saw that you had gone on mute, off of mute.
Yeah, I think that it's gonna be like really hard, you know, it's like to bring like the entire cohort, and we have like a limited time. So I think that probably the best, you know, work of action is just that you go and maybe go to like another person. I would be fine with that. Yeah. I don't know with the rest of the people, you know.
Daniel, any thoughts? He's probably busy. Okay, so Bertha, why don't we just do this? Like, in terms of next step, let's just say that we're gonna shoot for the first week of October, right? I think that if we can reach out to Councilmember Natalie Fonny Gonzalez and Gabe Albernas, I can reach out to them, or I guess, Bertha, I don't know if you have an official process of wanting to reach out to their schedulers, eyeing that week of October. And then I think we can just follow up with Bertha. I know Vanessa's already said she wants to go. I'm fine with it being just two members and not reaching quorum. But Bertha, not Bertha, Nora, excuse me, Nora may want to go. And so does that sound fine with everyone?
Well, at this point, maybe it's up to up to all of us, right? But it seems that the invitation is for all of us. Whoever would like to go, like, just participate.
Danielle,
Vanessa.
sorry, you were on mute. Danielle, I think you were speaking. We couldn't hear you.
Yeah, I was just trying to say if you guys can like the reactions. I was trying to do like thumbs up and stuff like that, trying to respond to the things they were saying. It's just I think they're blocked. Trying to put stuff in the chat, but it keeps it's blocked.
Sorry, I don't know how, I actually, so the settings have been set and I don't know how to enable the chat.
Okay, no worries, no worries. I wasn't listening, but I was trying to be part, like, respond to the questions.
I
Ruben?
can share both of the council members' schedulers with you, Alex. Again, I mean, if it's just the two of you, then you have, you know, your meeting. If it's more than three, then like I said, it'll certainly be a greater effort to, you know, make sure we're not violating any Open Meetings Act.
Got it. Okay. So I think we'll just move forward. I'll reach out to their schedulers. We'll plan something for October, Bertha, and then I'll just follow up with cohort members. If anything changes, right? And we do have members that want to come at the last minute, then before we put a date on the books, we'll follow up with the with your office or with your team, right, to ensure that we're not violating anything. But I think moving forward, we're looking at the first week of October, meeting with the two council members and prominent organizations and leaders that do work in the Hispanic/Latino community. Ruben. Ruben, you're on mute. Okay, I think we lost him. Okay, awesome. All right, well, I think that's it. I think that we covered everything. And I think we're good to close out the meeting.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Awesome.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.